stand by while NCLA cuts through the noise to signal abuse of administrative power. This is Administrative Static with Mark Chenoweth and John Vecchione.
Welcome to Administrative Static. Glad that you can be with us. And it's that time of year. It's that exciting time of year when everyone at the New Civil Liberties Alliance gets extremely excited about our brackets and the madness of March. And of course, I am talking about the King George III Prize for the worst bureaucrat in America. We have a bracket of 32 ready to go. And with us here to talk about it is the Director of Engagement here at the New Civil Liberties Alliance, Clegg Ivey, who put this bracket together. Clegg, welcome to Administrative Static.
Oh, Mark, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Well, you know what's not a pleasure, Clegg, is the sort of series of disasters that have led to people appearing on the bracket this year. The amount of regulatory overreach and nightmarish bureaucratic aggression represented on this bracket might be unprecedented. But where would you start? Who are the one seeds in this bracket? Maybe we should start there.
Well, Mark, you're right. These are runaway regulators running roughshod over our civil liberties, and unelected, unaccountable, and untouchable until now, Mark. And that's why we have them set up. So I think rather than talk about the number one seeds, I think you have to look at the wave. Last year, it was a lot of mandate shenanigans. This year, we've got censors. We've got people that are trying to shut us up and trying to deplatform us and censor us. We're talking about Vivek Murthy, the Surgeon General, Rob Flaherty, the White House's Director of Digital Strategy.
And he's the guy who was shutting down a lot of that Twitter and Facebook speech. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The White House was sending directives to the social media companies like Twitter saying, look, you need to shut these people up. You need to deplatform these people. These people can't say these things because we don't like the impact.
Throttle them. You need to throttle them.
The digital strategy was to shut other people up.
It was. And
right. That's some communication strategy.
They had, and there are other people in our bracket this year. Elvis Chan, an FBI agent out of the San Francisco field office, who had a direct line to Twitter and other social media companies, telling them exactly what they could and could not post. And some of the censorship here might well have had serious impacts on the elections, on the ability of people to make public policy about our health, engage in
rational debates about vaccine mandates and other policies.
Absolutely. So, and there were some other censors. I mean, Gavin Newsom tried to get in on it. He in the state of California tried to shut doctors up if they give advice about COVID that happens to be something that Dr. Fauci wouldn't agree with.
Did Governor Newsom go to medical school?
No, but he did stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess that qualifies him to be giving people health advice just about as much as it qualifies him to be giving people public policy advice about how to run their lives, as he does all the time as governor of California.
He does. And it's always restrictions for thee, but never for me. We all remember
the French Laundry.
Fateful French Laundry. Almost as bad as the censors.
Which is a restaurant, not a place where you get your ruffled collars taken care of.
Saying nothing, absolutely nothing bad to say about French Laundry. A perfectly nice place to eat if you can afford it. And I guess the state of California can afford to send their governor there.
Well, we weren't the ones telling people they couldn't go out to eat.
That's correct. But almost as bad as the censors.
But before we move from the censors, I just want to point out to John, maybe the White House is onto something here. Imagine what our podcast audience would be if we could just shut up all the other podcasts. We might have thousands of listeners, John.
That's exactly right. They'd all be over here. We would have to do. I think the top ones are like for makeup and things like that, appearance podcasts.
Okay. Well,
and we could get all their people coming in here. Oh, administrative law. Wait a minute. I want to know how I do my eyebrows. Anyway. Well, actually, some of the most popular podcasts are those murder mystery podcasts.
Yes, and murder mystery. Yeah,
and I think we have several, criminal mysteries to unravel here. And in addition to the censors, Mark, I think this year we have got some folks in this bracket that are part of a really unsettling surveillance state that is unfolding. People like, this is incredible, Margaret Cook with the Massachusetts Department of Health.
Yeah, probably a name that most Americans have never heard.
Until today, I'm sure that she is a complete unknown.
But there are at least 1 million people that should care about her.
And there are 1 million people who had their phones. They had a secret tracking app that the state of Massachusetts just had worked with Google and had it installed on people's Android phones to help track them during COVID.
Turning on their Bluetooth, using their Bluetooth against them.
Absolutely. And without their knowledge, without their knowledge or awareness.
Without knowledge, without consent, without a warrant, without suspicion.
And I want to point out, 49 states had access to this app and made it voluntary, except Margaret Cook's Massachusetts, which made it secret and mandatory.
Right. That's right. That's right.
It was bad enough when U2 did this to us, and that U2 song showed up on our phones 10 years ago.
Oh, well, I'd forgotten about that.
I don't know about it,
but
so
I do remember that.
But when the government is doing that, if they get away with it once, we don't call them out on this. This stuff is going to keep happening.
Maybe that's why it didn't happen on Apple iPhones. Maybe they learned their lesson from the YouTube.
I think 10 years ago, I still had a BlackBerry, so I couldn't get it.
What do you mean 10 years ago? I still have a BlackBerry, John.
Yeah, and then Margaret Cook isn't alone. We have Janet Coit, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Fisheries Department. Those folks are basically tracking our fishermen and charter boat captains 24/7, forcing them to wear. John, you described it as
until
our
John.
client always calls it an ankle bracelet without a conviction.
Yeah. And we stopped that.
John stopped that. John went to court single-handedly, almost, and argued it in the Fifth Circuit and won but that doesn't mean that these bureaucrats should be spared from derision.
Absolutely not. Just because we managed to stop some of these things, like we managed to get a success against the ATF in the bump stock case, but that's not going to stop me from nominating Stephen Dettelbach, the director of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, because they tried to change the law without going to Congress. So Mark, there are so many people that we could talk about. How about, here's one for you. How about Richard Trumka?
Mr. Gas Stoves. He's at my old shop, the Consumer Product Safety Commission.
That's right. This man wants to tell you you can't have a gas stove. He's going to tell you exactly how long the cords are allowed to be on your blinds. He's going to tell you what size magnets you're allowed to own. These people want to control every access of our every part of our lives, and they want to tell us exactly what we can and can't do. It's just gotten out of control, Mark.
And it's safe. It's always for your own good.
Well, and the children, John.
Oh, that's
Don't forget about the children.
That is true.
Yeah. In fact, one of my favorite things that happened at the Consumer Product Safety Commission when I was there is that they adopted a new, not logo, but a shield, one of those devices that every agency has. But their new one had an American eagle with a little baby eagle under its wing. Like just to put a fine point on that for the children sort of message.
Let's drive home that nanny state imagery.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So Richard Trumka is one of our top candidates. Another Richard Cordray, another name that I don't know if enough people know who this man is.
He's failed gubernatorial candidate of Ohio.
Yeah, but he's had such an impact over the last 10 years. His fingerprints are on everything.
Oh yeah, he's been the bureaucrat in chief. He was the head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. He was the one who President Obama illegally recess appointed to be the head of the CFPB, and then
very same.
Yes, in that case, a case about that issue went all the way up to the Supreme Court. Noel Canning v. NLRB. But yeah, he got the CFPB off to a terrible start. What's he doing now, Clegg?
Well, he's running the Federal Student Aid Department underneath the Department of Ed. Now, can you think of any reason we will be talking about the Federal Student Aid folks?
He wouldn't have anything to do with unlawful student loan cancellations, would he?
He would have everything to do with that. And of course, NCLA has gone after these folks for unlawfully just massive change to the law. And the Biden administration deserves to be called out for this. We're suing, of course, representing Cato. They're our client, and we recently had a luncheon law all about this exact topic. And I think I wish Richard Cordray's name had come up more. I wish more people knew who this man was, and because it's easy enough to say, oh, this president or that president. But these bureaucrats, they're the ones that are driving all of this stuff.
Well, Richard Cordray keeps turning up like a bad penny. I mean, this guy's at the root of so much bureaucratic malfeasance and misfeasance. It's unbelievable. And that's why I cast my vote for Richard Cordray in this bracket when we had a sort of proto bracket at CPAC, 2 weeks ago?
A kind of straw poll. That's right.
Yes.
We did a dry run, and Richard Cordray did quite well.
Well, particularly since he's a utility player. He's not just in one spot. You can put him anywhere, and he's got a tremendous war for the administrative state.
Yes. He is the Whit Merrifield of bureaucratic malfeasance for Kansas City Royals, and I guess now Toronto Blue Jays fans out there.
Yeah, no, there's a through line to this guy's story, and that story is if there's an agency where there's overreach, lift up the hood and you will find him there.
Well, and he doesn't even need direction from the president. Some of these people could, as a defense, say, hey, the president said they wanted me to do this, but there's no direction. He just does it.
Well, he got used to that at the CFPB, where the president had no control over him during his tenure there. It wasn't until after he left that the Supreme Court decided the president could control the CFPB.
So. Well, now that you mentioned out of control, I feel like there's a matchup that I want to highlight. It's a lot of fun. We're talking about Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of the Department of Transportation, against Lena Khan, the chair of the FTC.
Khan.
Listeners, I want you all imagine James T. Kirk, fist in the air, screaming out. That's right. So it's a shame to me that both of these people cannot advance.
Not everyone can win, but everyone can play, Clegg.
Yes.
And we'll come back right after this to tell people how they can vote in this bracket and maybe give them some more juicy matchups to consider. Do you have anything else to share in the next segment? Should people stay tuned, Clegg?
People should stay tuned because there's so many more shenanigans. Absolutely.
All right. We're back on Administrative Static, and we're talking to NCLA Director of Engagement, Clegg Ivey, who is also the director of the King George III Prize Bracket, calling out the worst government abuses of civil liberties. So we have a bracket of 32, Clegg. Let's talk about some of these first round matchups. Are there any matchups that you're particularly looking forward to seeing who moves forward to the second round?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think we're all interested. I mentioned Stephen Dettelbach of the ATF earlier, but what I did mention is that he has a first round matchup against Merrick Garland.
Ooh, the Attorney General. So these are the two people the most responsible for this problem, but who are people going to hold more responsible for the bump stock ban?
That's part of why we wanted to match them up. We wanted to know, who is more responsible. Now, I think Merrick Garland has a bunch of other reasons why people are probably going to vote for him, but I think you need to keep your eye on that.
Yeah, and it was macho, right?
And it was implemented before Garland got in there.
That's true.
Originally,
that's true. And well, look, the ATF were taking their cues actually from the Obama administration, who wanted Congress to pass a law. Congress considered it. The law wasn't passed, and the president got upset, said we need to do something about this, and the ATF said we'll hook you up.
We're your man, President Trump.
That's right.
We'll get this ban done.
Yeah. So I think another fantastic matchup that I wanted to mention was Janet Yellen, the Secretary of the Treasury, is going head to head with Miguel Cardona, the Secretary of the Department of Ed.
Ooh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
No, I will stick up for
Okay.
Yellen here because I think Cardona does it full-throatedly, but Yellen's worst thing. Yellen's worst thing is they made her do it. She tried. She was going to fix the constitutional problem by doing a regulation that they weren't going to cause any problems. I don't think Yellen wanted to do that.
Yeah, but Yellen did just is responsible for a new $19 trillion bank deposit guarantee this
That
week.
is true.
But that's not what she's on the bracket for.
Yeah.
She's on the bracket for 2022 activities.
Correct.
So she may be on the list again next year. But this is because of her work on the state tax ban, which was
Correct.
a problem enough.
Well, Mark, I'll tell you, this happens every year. We put somebody on the bracket, and between the time that they have committed the atrocity that got them nominated in the first place and the time the bracket is announced, something else happens.
They commit another atrocity.
Well, I mean, let's talk about a first-round matchup that I hadn't thought much of until recently, and that's Vivek Murthy, again, the Surgeon General, versus, now tell me if you've recognized this name. You probably don't. Martin J. Grunberg.
No, that's
Now, anybody know what agency Martin J. Grunberg heads? It's FDIC. Now, why?
Oh, that's a sleeper.
Wow.
Yeah. So when we decided to nominate the FDIC, it was all about. It had nothing to do with this current crisis.
Contra Tom.
Yes. Very good.
Yeah. And now I think FDIC is probably going to have a surprise.
What did he do at FDIC?
Well, the problem with the FDIC really is it's a similar problem that we've gone after before. And it's a matter of an unconstitutional structure, right?
Yeah.
Unlike the bureaucrats, right? They're insulated from accountability, and they're shielded from removal with a kind of tenure protection that we claim is unconstitutional, right? The president
And many people do. It's not idiosyncratic to us.
Yes.
Well, we might have started it, John.
Yeah. Okay.
I couldn't tell whether you're saying many people do it, because this is also a problem at many agencies.
Correct.
Right. Where you can't get rid of these bureaucrats, that no matter how badly they perform, no matter how much they ignore the wishes of the executive, you can't do anything about it because these people are protected from removal.
Well, one question people asked me over and over again at CPAC when they came up to vote on the bracket was, where's Anthony Fauci? I want to vote for Anthony Fauci. So I'm going to ask you the same question, Clegg. Where is Anthony Fauci on this bracket?
I got to tell you, last year's champion, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who famously said, "I am the science." When people criticize the science, I tell them, "I am the science," which is a fantastic reference. I think he was referring to Judge Dredd.
I am the law.
Yeah, I am the law, right? But we couldn't put him in again this year. First of all, he would have been the runaway winner.
It's just not fair to the other 31 contestants.
It isn't fair. It isn't fair. You know, when I went to the University of Chicago back in the day, they used to say that Chicago was where fun goes to die.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it's where they say fair is a 4-letter word.
But they said it wasn't fair. Chicago was never in those calculations of which were the best party schools, because we're just going to get destroyed by Arizona State, or
it finished below the service academies
or some convents, I hear.
Yeah. And Dr. Fauci, though, I got to tell you, Mark, I think we're going to roll out something special for him this year.
I don't know about that. But he's not going to be. He's not on there because he won last year.
Yeah,
he's the defending champion, so he's exempt.
And
unlike the University of Kansas, which is defending their national championship in March Madness, Anthony Fauci cannot.
That's right. But you know who can be back and who is back is Rochelle Walensky, right? The director of the CDC. Now that's who Fauci beat out last year, and now she's got a chance. Now she has to get through this first round matchup where she's facing off against Gary Gensler.
From the SEC.
Yes, the Securities and Exchange Commission. If there's one agency in all of these brackets that is committing the most number, the breadth and depth of constitutional violations, it's the SEC. I mean,
certainly by the number of lawsuits filed by NCLA, you would think that the SEC is the worst agency out there, and they've done so many terrible things. What's their 2022 sin that we're the most exercised about?
Oh, it's got to be the speech gag, Mark. Where the NCLA is suing the SEC. Here's what happens when the SEC comes after you. You have first of all, you become radioactive. You can't practice your profession, and you can't get anyone to help you. Your friends will not come to your aid. They won't because the SEC says, "Yeah, that's a nice career you got there. It would be a shame if something bad happened to it." So and then.
Witness intimidation.
That's correct. And then only the really rich people, I mean, super rich, like Elon Musk and Mark Cuban style, they're the only ones that can really afford to fight the SEC. Everyone else has to settle. And when you settle, Mark, they make you agree that you will not say anything negative about your case. You will not claim that you didn't do what you were accused of doing, despite the fact that a settlement is often, is almost a no admit, no deny. Yeah. And the worst thing is, the rest of us, we don't know what happened in those cases. And so the next person that gets accused can't say, well, wait a minute now, you weren't able to prove this against those people. This speech gag, it violates our First Amendment rights. And it gives the SEC even more power because all of their activities are shrouded in secrecy.
So are there any other favored first round matchups here? Like who's maybe the most hated traditional matchup? I mean, is Duke on there somewhere?
Well, I go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, here at the NCLA, we've got Michael S. Regan, the administrator of the EPA, and they've had a
I was wondering when they're coming, because you said the SEC is the most sued, probably by us, but the EPA, sometimes we don't sue them because everyone else is.
Yeah, I mean, the EPA, I will say, we had a pretty good year last year. I mean, many people have heard about West Virginia, the EPA. The major questions doctrine has really put a kink in the plans that the EPA had to remake the entire American economy without a lick of input from Congress.
And if you pick your bracket based on team colors, this is green.
That's right. So I think the EPA is a kind of Duke. We haven't yet talked about the IRS.
That's Duke. I think that's Duke right there.
And the IRS is up against the CFTC. So you've got you've got a couple of financial players there. Now, look, I think the IRS is as relevant right now as the FDIC. A lot of these
April is coming.
87,000 new agents, right?
87,000 new agents. A real focus on crypto and a sense that you can see that the IRS wants to move towards a centralized digital currency that will give them even more control. And NCLA has been fighting against the IRS's the decision that if you're in crypto, they can have complete control over
you're assumed to be a criminal.
That's right. And they'll violate your Fourth Amendment rights because they're like, oh, well, you're doing crypto, so you're obviously bad. You're obviously engaged in some bad behavior. So lots of great matchups. With the time we have left, we need to talk about how to vote in this, and then we can come back, John, if there's time. But Clegg, tell us how can people vote on this? There are a couple of ways. First of all, you've got to find us on Twitter
at NCLA Legal.
Yeah, and I think we're on all the social media, but we're doing polls on Twitter. That's a lot of fun. So you can vote directly on Twitter. You can also go to our website, NCLA Legal. .org/KGIII, right? So just it's KG3, KGIII, King George III, or just Google search it and you'll find you can find our thing. It's the first result, and then on there you'll see our bracket. The bracket's also posted on social media, and you'll be able to vote in each of the matchups. So there are 32 candidates. That means 16 first round matchups. You can place all 16 votes at once. You don't have to vote for all of them, for the ones you want, and then submit that, and we'll tally those. And our first round lasts a little bit longer than the NC.
Yes, this is not just 2 days.
Right.
We'll be rolling this out for 2 weeks, and there's a different Twitter poll every day, I believe, showing different matchups, so people can keep coming back and voting in those Twitter matchups.
And over the next 2 weeks, we're going to be introducing each and every nominee and talking a little bit more at length about why they deserve to be nominated. So you're going to learn a lot about some stuff that's going to make you pretty mad.
Yeah, if you want to see, what arguably are the 32 worst abuses of civil liberties last year, tune in, check out the bracket, read the little blurbs that Clegg has put together about each of the contestants, and you'll learn a lot. John, did you?
Well, I did want to note. We'll probably talk more about it next week, but cover of New York Times today had the story about the taking away people's language points.
Yeah, from the Fulbright.
Prize. And I still don't know who did that.
Well, we should blame Miguel Cardona for that. It was the 1998 Clinton Department of Education, but maybe sometime we could have a historical bracket. But for 2022 offenses, we would have to blame Miguel Cardona. I guess he hasn't fixed it.
He hasn't fixed it.
Yeah, it absolutely disadvantages people who have a foreign language as their first language, and that's a kind of discrimination I don't have to tell you about that is supposed to be illegal.
Absolutely, it's national origin discrimination. Read that, as John said, front page New York Times today, giving credit to the NCLA, and then after you do that, go and check out our website, King George III Prize, and cast your votes. We'll be back with more right after this on Administrative Static. Thanks for being with us, Clegg.
It was a blast.